A diplomatic crisis over events that took place nearly 100 years ago. Having declared the 1915 killing of Armenians as a genocide, the French Parliament has now passed a law stating that to deny this assertion is a crime. Turkey is reacting with anger and asking to what extent the move is politically motivated. This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Mike Hanna. The lower house of the French Parliament has approved a bill Thursday that would make it a crime to deny the killings by Ottoman Turks more than 90 years ago were genocide. The proposed sentence, 1 year in prison and a $59,000 fine. Turkey vehemently rejects the term genocide and has withdrawn its ambassador because of the vote. The dispute's expected to further harm Turkish-French relations, already strained by President Sarkozy's repeated rejection of Turkey's bid to join the European Union.
I have sent a letter to President Sarkozy and I have conveyed my disquiet over this issue. I have clearly stated that the draft law that will be discussed in the General Assembly of the French Parliament, and that makes it illegal to deny the so-called Armenian genocide, would cause grave consequences in relations.
The fate of Armenians at the hands of Ottoman Turks during World War I remains a highly sensitive issue. Turkey has resisted widespread calls for it to recognise the killings as genocide, while historians continue to argue about the events. There's no dispute of the fact that hundreds of thousands of Armenians died. The accusation that Ottoman Turks deported them en masse from eastern Anatolia to the Syrian desert and elsewhere in 1915 and 16. Some were killed by Ottoman troops, others died of starvation or disease. But there is argument about the number of Armenians that died and the circumstances of their deaths. Armenians say 1.5 million were killed during World War I under Ottoman rule and insist this constituted genocide. Both this term and the figures are hotly rejected by Turkey. It says between 300 to 500,000 Armenians died and argues that at least as many Turks were killed during the war, in which the Armenians sided with Russia. More than 20 countries formally recognize the Armenian killings as a genocide, including Argentina, Belgium, Canada, France, Italy, Russia and Uruguay. However, countries like the UK, the US and Israel are among those that use the word atrocity to describe the events, recognizing that the term genocide has implications in international law. In March 2010, Turkey withdrew its ambassador to Washington after a US Congressional Committee narrowly approved a resolution branding the killings as genocide, even though this never made it to a vote in Congress. And it's worth mentioning that despite all of this and after decades of hostility, there has been a slight thaw in relations between Turkey and Armenia, which signed an agreement in October 2009 to establish diplomatic relations and open their borders. But this is yet to be ratified by either parliament, and some in the Turkish government accuse Armenia of trying to alter the terms of the deal. So what are the motives of the French move and why is Turkey so angry? To answer this question, we're joined by our guests. In Paris, we have Claire Mouradian. She's an Armenian specialist at the Institute for Scientific Research. In Paris as well, we're joined by Anne-Elisabeth Moutet. She's a French political journalist and columnist for the Sunday Telegraph. And in Ankara, we're joined by Yusuf, Kanli, a columnist for the Turkish newspaper Hürriyet Daily News. Welcome to all of you. Let's begin with Anne-Elisabeth Moutet. Why do you think that this debate is happening now?
Well, it was ongoing for quite some time. There have been previous resolutions about this, and you have to realize that this is an electoral year, that there are many Armenians in many French constituencies. The other thing is that this would only transpose into French law what already exists in European law, i.e. you're not allowed to, on the one hand, there was a massacre of Armenians and it's called genocide, and on the other, it is illegal in European law to deny genocide.
Yusuf Kanli, what's your view about the timing of this debate in this new bill?
Of course, I do agree that it's part of the French election campaign. Therefore, it's so unfortunate that Turkish-French relations are becoming victim of some political aspirations of some politicians. But I do disagree regarding this reflection of what already exists in the European law to French law, because the French law is penalizing or criminalizing freedom of thought.
Well, we'll get onto those particular issues, but Claire Mouradian, your view about the timing of this bill?
Well, it has been almost 100 years that the genocide has been committed, and of course you can always say that it's not the good timing for condemning it. First I would like also to correct something. I am not an Armenian specialist, but I am a French specialist of Armenian history, and I would say also that as a French citizen, I think that the Armenian vote issue is a myth. There is no Armenian vote, there is no Jewish vote, there is not any Arabic vote. French citizens and from Armenian origin or Jews, etc., vote like their other citizens for the right, for the left, for anything. So, of course, maybe this is taken as a tool, but it's not completely related to the electoral campaign. Part of it, of course, but not all of it. So I think that time has come and to finally recognize this issue. And I will add something also. The text of the bill is not quoting the Armenian genocide per se. It's quoting all the genocides, and Turkey is not mentioned at all in the bill.
Well, Anne-Elisabeth Moutet, would you like to pick up on that particular point, the claim that this is not aimed at Turkey necessarily?
I'm not sure that this is not disingenuous. I mean, it is quite true that European law that is being transposed, and it has to be in French law, has to do with all genocides. There's also a feeling in France that you cannot build a modern 21st century nation within Europe with denial of history, especially when denial of history contradicts the rulings that were passed in Turkey as early as 1919, when some of the main instigators of the massacre of Armenians were actually condemned to death by the Turkish government. So there's also a sort of general feeling that this is something that reaffirms the idea that you cannot you cannot deny history.
Well, Yusuf Kanli in Ankara, you heard the phrase there, denying history. What's your view of that?
You see, my colleague is saying it with all clarity. In early part of this last century, during the years when these incidents were alleged to have happened, first, the Ottoman judicial system brought to justice those allegations. Second, the British occupation authority took punitive measures against those people alleged to have committed those crimes. And at the Malta trials, it was decided that there is no need for judicial action. And for those people accused and sentenced by the Ottoman courts, they were sentenced, they were hanged. All these prove that there was no systematic government action against the Armenian population except forced resettlement. And naturally, I do sympathize with the mass killings of the time, the immense suffering of the time, I do accept that, I mean, great atrocities were committed. That's something else. Describing it as genocide is the problematic part of it. Because then you need a government sponsoring the actions. Whereas in this case, we don't have such a thing. Plus, the Ottoman government all the time punished its own officers and civilians.
Well, we're getting into a debate about those particular specifics, but certainly let's look at the consequences. And in an escalation of this diplomatic dispute, the Turkish Prime Minister has slammed France for what he refers to as its brutal colonial past. He said, "Today, nobody talks about the 45,000 Algerian deaths in 1945 or the role of France in the massacre of 800,000 people in Rwanda in 1994. He added, Those who do not wish to see genocide should take another peek at their own dirty and bloody histories. Well, Anne-Elisabeth Moutet, these are certainly strong words that would appear to be ratcheting up the argument and taking it beyond the details to something that would impact on these countries' relationships.
Well, I mean, where does the minister gets his information except, but from French historians? We never denied it. We never denied all sorts of massacres, and most European nations have gotten some extremely unpleasant things in their past. Let's leave aside Germany for a moment, but the Belgians the king of the Belgians was responsible for what was possibly the first genocide of the 20th century in the Congo, and the Belgians find it very difficult to acknowledge this, but they acknowledge this. The French stood aside when a genocide was being perpetrated in Rwanda, and we had a parliamentary investigation, and it's not finished about this. We certainly do not deny what happened in the Algerian war. It's not easy to acknowledge that you've been grievously at fault, but that's the way to be a modern nation. And then you go on, but you do not sweep it under the carpet and call it alleged.
Yeah, but we do have the situation, I'd like to put this to Claire Mouradian in Paris, of that term genocide, which has immense implications in international law. We had the point from Yusuf Kanli that you cannot strictly use the term genocide for killings that nobody disputes. I'd like your view on that, Claire Mouradian.
I have several things to say. First of all, just today, the Turkish Human Rights Association called for the vote of this bill because it considered that it was very important to condemn very strongly the planned annihilation of a population. So then France has voted a bill also on its colonial history, and I would just remind the October 1999 bill considering that the events in Algeria were a colonial war and not a domestic police operation, as was said before. So the parliament has also adopted a bill on this part of history. And as Sabine Moutet said, French historians have never denied that. As for the consequences, just let me remind you also that in 2001, there was, when the other bill was adopted, acknowledging the Armenian genocide, again not quoting the Ottoman Empire nor Turkey, there was the same kind of blackmail or threats, which in a way are unacceptable, but the economic relations between France and Turkey since then have increased by 10%. 10-12% in the last 10 years. So I think that is the present anger of Turkey is a kind of very of course, sensitive. They are very sensitive to it, but I think they are very frightened now by the erections in their own society, because there are a bunch of very courageous historians, intellectuals, journalists that are sometimes arrested for that call for the acknowledgement, the recognition of the Armenian genocide.
Well, you mentioned there the 2001, when it was actually described as a genocide in French Parliament. In 2006 as well, there was an attempt to pass it in the French Parliament, making this a crime to deny such recognition. But the point that I'd like to put to Yusuf Kanli in Ankara is, has Turkey changed? In 2001, it was in an economic crisis. 2006, it was attempting very strongly to be a member of the European Union. These attempts now appear to be almost a thing of the past. Is this a different Turkey that we are looking at now, Yusuf Kanli, that will react differently to the way it reacted in the past?
Our small friend at the Elysee Palace is making the same bad mistake, that Turkey is the country of 2001, or Turkish-European relations are the same of 2001. But lots of things have changed since then. First of all, Turkish economy is no longer in a crisis. European economy is in a crisis. On the contrary, Turkey is not the country of 2001. Turkish economic and political cloud is quite strong now. Thanks to contributions of France as well, Turkish-European Union relations have come almost to a standstill, if not totally frozen or totally given up. Therefore, the reaction from Turkey this time would not be comparable with the 2001 crisis. And the friends who are still thinking, that, I mean, from 2001 on, Turkish-French relations improved by, economic relations improved by 10-12%, would see the repercussions, would see and live the repercussions of this hostility towards the Turkish nation. Because this is not just a simple law.
Well, Anne-Elisabeth, Moutet, your reaction to that? We're talking about what one politician has talked about as a $20 billion relationship.
You know, yes, there is, first of all, I don't think all of it can vanish like this, but second, there's such a thing as if the Turks, you know, the Turkish-French relationship goes both ways, and if the Turkish government decides to make a matter of principle out of this in terms of seeing this as aggression against Turkey, it's their own lookout. The French do not mean it that way. But on the other hand, there is absolutely no way that they're going to suddenly sort of step back and say, oh, well, this is fine. What the French people and what the French Parliament, bipartisan, I might add, all say is this is the truth and we're not going to change it. And the more it is framed in terms of this kind of blackmail, the more the French are going to sort of dig their heels in and say, well, the way you react to this is actually putting the nail in the coffin on French-Turkish relations. It is very true that France objected to the entry of Turkey in the European Union for all sorts of reasons, and some were practical and demographic reasons, and the idea that the development in some parts of Turkey and the large number of Turk citizens into the European Union was possibly something that the economic balance of the European Union could not take, or at least not in the next 20 years' time. But if Turkey decides that anything that is said in a historic matter that happened a century ago is not a matter for discussion and is a matter for a boycott of France, this is not the kind of relations that one wants to have within the European Union.
Well, taking all the points that you made there, I'd like to go to Claire Mouradian with this particular question that we've heard that there are a number of reasons for France to oppose Turkey's entry to the European Union. However, there does appear to be a certain degree of personal in it. And Nicolas Sarkozy has gone out of his way to make very public comments about why Turkey should not be part of the European Union, including the claim that there is a social difference, a cultural difference between Turkey and the members of the European Union. Your view of that, Claire Mouradian?
Well, let's talk about what is the European Union. If the European Union is only an economic union, Turkey is almost part of it. If it's a kind of military union around NATO, Turkey is already part of it. If it's a general European organization close to the Council of Europe, Turkey is already part of it. But if the European Union is to be a political union, federal union, the problem is quite different, and it's not only a question of geography, it's a question of politics, of democracy, the state of democracy in that country. The question is not only the Armenian genocide issue, which, although this is a big issue. Do you think that Nazi Germany denying the Jewish genocide would be part of the European Union? I don't think so. But also there are some other problems in Turkey, the Kurdish problem, the women issues, all the minorities issues, and also, as we have seen these last days, the state of freedom of speech. We had recently hundreds of arrests of intellectuals, of journalists, of professors, only because they were taboo breakers. So it's also a problem of the state of democracy in that country. And I think that the Armenian genocide issue is a test for this democracy.
Well, Yusuf Kanli, let me put the question to you directly. Is there a connection, do you believe, between the legislation that has just gone through the French Parliament and the opposition of Turkey's entrance to the European Union, and any basis whatsoever to what we've just heard there from Claire Mouradian, that there are a number of issues that differentiate Turkey from those who have become members of that European club?
Indeed, I do share the list of grievances or the deficiencies mentioned, except the use of the word Armenian genocide. Indeed, Turkey has to improve its gender equality problems. Turkey has to improve its minority issues. Turkey has to improve environmental issues. Turkey has to do many reforms in order to qualify to be a democracy that we aspire to have. That democracy, of course, will have a place in Europe, perhaps, if Europe by that date is not dissolved. First of all. Two, of course, this this Sarkozy action against Turkey is a hostile action, is part of Turkey bashing program of Mr. Sarkozy, and unfortunately he will see that, I mean, this Turkey bashing will not help him because he will have to counter some other consequences.
Well, Anne-Elisabeth Moutet, you heard there the term Turkish bashing. What's your view?
Well, first of all, this is going to sound strange, but the French National Assembly does not obey Mr. Sarkozy. This is a bipartisan vote. You have MPs
It was introduced by a member of his. It was introduced by a member of his party, though.
It was, if anything, there have been comments that it made his life more complicated rather than the reverse. So, no, I mean, Sarkozy's stance on the entry of Turkey within the European Union is perfectly well known, but he is not the instigator of this bill. There is such a thing as a free parliament in France, and it is not related to this. That the whole situation is something that is in the minds of people, yes. That it was directed, absolutely not. I'm really sorry, but that's a general feeling in France.
Well, Claire Mouradian, would you like to add to that from your viewpoint?
Well, I think at a time where the Turkish society is changing, and I agree that Turkey has changed since 2001, 2000, because all these debates has steer outside the country, has steer debates inside the country, and there are a lot of movements for new rights, for new democracy, better democracy. So, of course, Turkey is changing, and I would like to say that this kind of action is helping the true democrats in these countries, and I think that that's very important. I just recall again what the human rights activists said just this morning, and it's also a way to fight against that law in the Turkey, this Article 301 in the Turkish criminal code that punish of imprisonment people who are, giving something against Turkishness, an article under which the Nobel Literature Prize Orhan Pamuk was about to be condemned, and so on. So I think Turkey Turkish society is changing, and when I'm talking about the Turks, I don't mean condemning some actions. I'm not talking about the Turkish people, but about the Turkish government, which is the successor state of the Ottoman Empire.
Let's just at this particular point, just give Yusuf Kanli a quick say here. Is Turkey going to go it alone now? Do you think that is going to be an initial result of this diplomatic dispute?
I don't think so. I don't think Turkey will not go alone. Turkey will remain on its European path. We will have problems. We will have tensions. But this is a path that we want to stick on. The government may have some other things in its mind, but the society will not deviate from this course. And as my friends there said as well, Article 301 and other hunches on our democracy will have to be removed. We have to remove them. The government is hesitant in acting on them so far, but we will continue pressuring them. I wrote tens of articles on this issue over the past years. We'll continue writing on these issues. But Turkey will not go alone. I mean, this is at the same time, don't forget, little bit related to Turkey's EU aspirations. Some elements in Europe are trying to force Turkey out of the game, but Turkey will not be out of this game.
Well, at that particular note, my thanks to our guests. I'm afraid we'll have to end there. Our thanks to our guests, Claire Mouradian, Anne-Elisabeth Moutet, and Yusuf Kanli. And thank you very much for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. If you want to send us your feedback, just email your thoughts to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. I'm Mike Hanna. Goodbye for now.